Hey, welcome back to Pianist Academy for another masterclass where we take your playing to the next level. Today we will take an in-depth look at perhaps Burgmüller's most studied and performed piece, number 2, from his Opus 100 Easy and Progressive Studies, Arabesque. The topics covered in the full masterclass, which is available on Thinkific, the link is below, include counting, technique and articulation, a quick talk about the use of the same versus alternating fingers in this piece in particular, and a short discussion about interpretation. Now, the second approach to these measures is incorporating more general motion from the body, okay? And it actually follows almost exactly the methods laid out in the Hanon-Faber book. Not Hanon the Virtuoso Pianist, but the Hanon-Faber book, especially the first about 10 pages or so. We're not going to talk about those exercises in today's class, but I will leave a link to get the book and to dive into it yourself if you'd like to. I've also done some other videos on the exercises in particular. So if you'd like to see the exercises alone and without application to a piece, because you'd like to practice those, I'll leave some resources for you below this video. So the gestures that we're going to talk about involve motion with the entire arm, not focusing on any one particular note, but focusing on the group of, let's say, 5. The 5 notes that we do have that begin the right hand, that begin the left hand, right? Each of those notes. I circled bar 3. We're actually going to start by looking at bar 4, okay? Bar 4, we use a gesture of basically the wrist and the arm performing a little bit of a downward semicircle as they play. So we drop into the thumb, and then we play across the 5 fingers and lift on the release. Drop into the thumb, cross the 5 fingers, release. Downward semicircle, right? There's also elbow involvement here. The elbow is also making a semicircle out away from the body. So you can think about this in 2 ways. You can either, depending on what works for you, you can let the wrist lead the semicircle, or you could think about the elbow leading the semicircle. Either one's fine. Know that they both work together. Now the focus when we practice like this is not on each individual note. It's on they drop one gesture through and release. Like that. Every bar that has this type of ascending 5-note pattern. So that's bar 4, bar 5, bar 6. Let's skip the left hand for now, but then bar 21, 22, 23, 29, and 30, all of those measures, we use this type of motion to play them. Downward, wrist circle, wrist semicircle, like that. You could even start, if you haven't felt this before, you can just place your hand on the key, make the wrist circle. Let the fingers leave. Fingers are nice and relaxed, not holding them anywhere, right? Go back and play it. Keeping the arm nice and fluid, okay? If you do this exercise and the other ones we're about to talk about without the individual focus of each note, we're just going to have probably a mess of that. Because we can make the gesture with the wrist, but if our fingers aren't active and our fingers haven't learned how to be active and have that energy and spark, this alone is not going to translate into anything with lazy fingers, right? So these build on each other. So we can't go without practicing both sides of this, right? Okay, let's jump back a measure. We're going to talk about measure 3. In this case, we use something that's kind of like a turnaround. So we're going to start with a down motion, an under semicircle, but then when the notes change direction and they come back down, the wrist comes over the top of the hand. So down and around, wrist comes over the top, back to thumb. Down, up, down, up, down, up, right? So now if we put bar 3 and bar 4 together, we're gonna see we have these 2 opposing wrist circles, down, up, and then down and around. Down and around, down and around. Yeah? Okay, anytime we need to change direction in a piece, we never want to change direction in a jagged way. So if we're only feeling playing the piano as a lateral motion, we're only moving left and right, if we have to pull the hand one way and then jerk it back in the other direction, that's going to cause a lot of articulation problems. It's probably going to cause a hiccup in our rhythm, and it's going to cause tension because we feel like we have to pull. As soon as we want to change direction, we pull from the upper arm and from the body to do this. If all we do is add some other motion that rounds this jagged edge off, if this motion is jagged, right, this is not jagged. Down as we ascend, up as we descend. Down as we ascend, up as we descend, right? So in there, I'm doing kind of a lower and an upper, or a lower, upper, and there's this motion, especially at the end of a passage. That's where it changes direction. So in bar 3, we have this in a very, very small chunk. So feel this drop into the first note, and then up and around as we go back. Drop in, up and around. So let's take a quick look at how we apply this to the left hand. If we jump over past the second ending here, we're looking at this bar that starts with the G sharp in the left hand. Now it's really important to know that the right hand and the left hand do not mimic each other in the way these motions work. When the right hand plays downward, as we ascend, the left hand would actually play upward. We're going to revisit that in a second. Let's first look at G sharp. This bar is going to start with an over motion and then an under motion as we descend. Over and then under. Over and then under. Okay, that's opposite of under and then over, right? So these the hands, because our hands are mirror images of each other, they're not built the same, right? They're flipped. So because of that, the direction that we feel the motion also flips. So here in this bar, over and then under. Same thing when we move on to the bar after, when we have now our ascending line. This sounds like what we played in the right hand. And the right hand had a simple under wrist circle. The left hand's going to make an over the top wrist circle as we approach the thumb. If we go under, it shouldn't feel good. It doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel natural, like keeping the wrist up higher and coming toward the thumb and dropping in. Left hand has this repeatedly. We go back to over and then under in 14, and then over the top in 15, over and then under in 16, over the top. Right? Okay, the last bars that we have to talk about are the last two measures of the piece, where it says risoluto. In this case, we have both hands descending. I think this is the only time in the piece where we have sixteenths descending. Right hand, the right hand part, unlike how we felt the ascending, right? The right hand is going to feel an upper circle. So we have an upper motion with the arm. The left hand, contrary, is going to feel a lower circle. So, you see how the hands are opposite of each other? Right hand is up, left hand is down. And then they kind of end in a more neutral place. What we're doing is we're feeling one gesture through all of this. That's the most important thing to remember. So if this is confusing, just go back and feel one hand at a time. Right? The other hand that's not occupied, that's the great thing about this piece. The other hand that's not occupied usually just has some chords that we have to navigate around. So the hand we can always focus on is the hand that's got all of these 16th note articulations, right? So when we're focusing on the right hand, just play the right hand for measure 3. We're feeling one gesture. When we play the left hand, we feel one gesture per bar. Now the eighths, we don't feel that. The movement is too slow. We don't need to feel a big wrist motion, right? And then when we get to the end of the piece, second to last measure, feel the hands separately. Make sure the right hand is coming over the top. Left hand is going under.